They watched Earth for decades before speaking. Silent probes hovered in low orbit, quietly collecting data, cataloging broadcasts, measuring emissions, and judging readiness. The Galactic Council didn't rush. It never had to. Civilizations far older and more powerful than humanity had fallen in line without struggle. Earth, by comparison, was barely post-industrial in their eyes, chaotic, divided, undisciplined. But dangerous in its unpredictability. That was the word used most often in internal memos, unpredictable. The decision came unanimously. Earth would not be invited to join the Council. It would be subdued. Peacefully if possible. Forcefully, if necessary. A standard diplomatic cruiser was dispatched to deliver the demand. The message was transmitted globally on all frequencies. It was clear, polished, and absolute. Surrender authority of your planetary systems. Dismantle all military assets. Prepare for integration under Council stewardship. Failure to comply will result in immediate correction. The voice was cold, unshaken. The humans heard it everywhere, in classrooms, in offices, in cars, in homes. It wasn't just a demand. It was a dismissal of their sovereignty. To the Council, Earth was not a nation, not a power, not even a challenge. It was a wild species that needed containment. Inside the Council chambers, there was no debate. Earth would submit. The humans might protest, but they would comply. They always did. That was the pattern. Resistance was a short-lived phase in most species. The ones who refused quickly became examples. Entire planetary histories rewritten with a single orbital bombardment. But Earth didn't respond immediately. There was silence. No surrender. No broadcast. Not even a message of defiance. Just silence. For 3 days. Then a reply came. One sentence. Request denied. No explanation. No apology. No elaboration. Just a flat refusal delivered with the same calm clarity as the original demand. It stunned the Council. Not because it was a rejection, those happened. But because it was so final. So concise. It lacked the desperation or hesitation they were accustomed to. Some among the Council laughed. They called it primitive pride. Others argued it was a bluff. But a few who had studied Earth more closely warned that humans didn't bluff in the ways most species did. When they said, "No," they often meant, "Never." Satellite scans showed no change in Earth's posture. There was no panic. No mass mobilization. No chaotic retreat or sudden escalation. Everything seemed normal. Too normal. Internal debates began in the higher councils. Some favored immediate orbital enforcement, cripple their satellites, shatter their communication grids, disable military infrastructure from space before they could react. But the diplomatic wing insisted on patience. The humans were testing boundaries. A second ultimatum would suffice. So they sent another. Harsher, more direct. You misunderstand the gravity of your position. You are not being offered a negotiation. This is an order. Compliance ensures survival. Resistance ensures extinction. This time, Earth responded instantly. Understood. Still denied. No emotion. No fear. Just resolve. It became evident something wasn't aligning with the Council's assumptions. This was not a fractured world government fumbling through its first interstellar interaction. This was something else. Something colder. Tighter. Focused. Intelligence began revisiting prior assessments. Military analysts found inconsistencies. Earth's surface defense systems were oddly configured, scattered, mobile, inconsistent with traditional defense patterns. But the distribution made sense when viewed through a different lens: redundancy. Humans were prepared for loss. They didn't just build systems to survive. They built them expecting failure, then accounted for it. Signals intercepted encoded low-frequency bursts revealed coordinated drills under the guise of civilian emergency exercises. Manufacturing output had shifted subtly. Factories once producing cars and electronics were now rerouted into obscure aerospace projects. Cargo freighters vanished from public registries, repurposed under military classifications. It wasn't panic. It was planning. The Council began to realize that Earth hadn't been idle during those silent decades. It had been watching back. Learning. Calculating. Preparing. And worse, anticipating. Earth's silence hadn't been a delay. It had been a trap. A lure. A deliberate pause to study the nature of the threat, to gauge reactions, to test responses. And now, the window had closed. Humanity had heard the demands. And chosen. Not with loud defiance or public rage, but with a surgical, unwavering decision. One that had already set events in motion long before the first Council ship reached the edge of the system. Humanity had made up its mind. There would be no surrender. No compromise. No seat at the Council table bought with obedience. There would only be the answer they had rehearsed in silence. Missiles. Earth's refusal wasn't a gamble. It was the result of years of hidden preparation. Long before the Council's message, Earth's top strategic minds had entertained the possibility of hostile first contact. Not because of paranoia, but because of patterns. History showed what happened when advanced civilizations encountered others. The stronger imposed. The weaker submitted. Humanity had no intention of becoming the latter. Military and scientific leadership had formed a covert alliance decades earlier. A quiet doctrine emerged: assume the worst, plan for the impossible, prepare for retaliation. It became the foundation of every major defense advancement. Publicly, Earth remained fractured. Politically divided. But underground, in shielded facilities and encrypted networks, the planet operated with unity no outsider could see. Intelligence agencies began dissecting every intercepted alien signal. They built linguistic databases before the Council ever spoke. Astrophysicists studied the warp signatures of distant ships. Engineers reverse-engineered unknown energy patterns into theoretical defenses. When the demand came, Earth already knew it might. The Sentinel Protocol, classified at the highest levels, became Earth's hidden backbone. It wasn't a single weapon but a global system of countermeasures: autonomous drone fleets, atmospheric missile silos, kinetic satellite arrays, and AI-directed jamming systems. Redundancy was the core principle. Nothing existed in isolation. Every node had backups. Every defense was layered. No one failure would expose the whole. The public knew none of this. Even most militaries were unaware of the full scope. Civilian industries, under various commercial ventures, had been producing advanced materials and propulsion components in plain sight. The data centers powering Earth's digital economy also hosted black box war algorithms designed to deploy rapid responses without central command. Contingency became culture. The Council's arrogance had been Earth's advantage. They believed no young species could develop true deterrence. They measured strength by technology, numbers, age. But humanity had something different. It learned through failure. Unlike the Council, which operated on tradition and cautious diplomacy, humans adapted through crisis. Missile systems weren't built for aesthetics. They were functional, ugly, precise. Some didn't even carry explosives, just dense tungsten rods dropped from orbit, delivering kinetic devastation. Simpler, faster, harder to intercept. Lasers were decentralized. No single source. No central hub. Power was distributed in microreactors too small to target individually. It wasn't about overwhelming firepower. It was about survivable attrition. A key factor was unpredictability. Earth's military simulations didn't follow conventional logic. War games were trained to simulate chaos, miscommunication, system breakdown, leadership death. Units trained not in obedience but in independence. Officers were taught to operate without orders if necessary. Doctrine favored decision over hesitation. Electronic warfare took a front seat. Instead of shielding systems from intrusion, Earth built devices that invited scans, then overloaded the scanners with viral loops. Decoy signals, false thermal footprints, ghost fleets created through holographic arrays. Council targeting systems would find themselves tracking shadows. Perhaps the most unsettling element was Earth's psychological warfare. The global response to the Council's demand wasn't just defiance, it was deliberate information control. Every word chosen, every silence calculated. Council observers were being fed a crafted narrative that Earth was proud, emotional, reckless. Behind that mask was a cold machine of contingency planning. Even entertainment had been quietly leveraged. Popular media began pushing anti-subjugation narratives years earlier. Documentaries, games, literature, each seeded public awareness of a possible alien threat. Without panic, populations were conditioned to view resistance as inevitable. Morale, the invisible weapon, had been reinforced long before the first warning. Communications across Earth's networks were encrypted under new protocols that didn't follow standard quantum patterns. Council eavesdropping became useless. AI interpreters failed to parse disinformation campaigns crafted by human minds. Every probe the Council sent was quietly redirected, jammed, or misled. Some were captured. Some reprogrammed and returned with altered data. When the first Council scout ships neared the solar system, they saw no change. Earth looked complacent. Peaceful. But hidden under oceans, buried beneath polar ice, orbiting in disguised civilian satellites, systems were active, tracking, waiting. Timers calibrated to microseconds. Failsafes checked every 5 minutes by independent processes. Command centers operated in shifts that rotated unpredictably. Human officers communicated through protocols designed to trigger no pattern recognition. If any node fell, 10 others would activate. There would be no decapitation strike. No swift victory. What unnerved the few alien observers allowed to watch from afar wasn't the hardware. It was the intent. The patience. The quiet, confident readiness of a species that had spent generations preparing not to be conquered. The Council thought Earth would scream. Instead, it whispered. A silent signal hidden deep in cosmic background noise, bouncing across satellites, encrypted and fragmented, reached every system. Authorization unlocked. The Council had issued demands. Earth had already chosen its answer. The Council's battle group arrived on schedule, assuming their presence alone would be enough. Dozens of ships formed an arc beyond Jupiter, advanced in design, massive in scale. They radiated confidence, exuding centuries of interstellar dominance. Their orders were precise: intimidate, observe, respond only if provoked. They anticipated negotiations, at most a few surgical strikes. What they encountered defied expectation. Long-range sensors began returning corrupted data. Positions of Earth-based defense platforms shifted without logic. Artificial satellites showed inconsistent readings, phasing in and out of known coordinates. Fleet communications began suffering static bursts, then full blackouts on encrypted bands. Initial reports blamed environmental interference. Then those reports stopped. The first loss came without visual confirmation. A mid-tier cruiser vanished from the formation. One moment it was relaying telemetry, the next it was gone. No explosion, no debris, just silence. Seconds later, an emergency beacon pulsed from deep within Jupiter's radiation belt. The cruiser hadn't been destroyed. It had been displaced, jammed through space, folded out of conventional position using a localized spatial weapon the Council had never seen used by a non-Council species. Panic didn't set in, but confusion did. Command ships recalibrated their scans. The updated telemetry showed over 200 objects previously unseen, now rapidly approaching. They weren't ships. Not in the traditional sense. They were war drones, AI-guided, cold and unfeeling, propelled not by elegance but by brute force. Some accelerated through fusion jets, others spun using gravitational slingshot paths. None matched Council design logic. The drones didn't ask questions. They opened fire with simultaneous kinetic strikes, targeting exposed comm arrays, heat vents, and impulse drives. Shields held briefly. But Earth hadn't aimed to destroy. The first wave was meant to disable. Second wave followed 20 seconds later, far heavier. This time with payloads designed to shatter hulls. Within 6 minutes, 4 Council vessels had lost maneuvering capabilities. 2 command bridges went offline. Emergency firewalls triggered fleet fragmentation. Vessels fell into fallback patterns but quickly realized Earth's attack wasn't central, it was distributed. No single source. No origin point. Hundreds of launch signatures spanned the entire solar system. Missiles didn't follow predictable arcs. Their courses shifted mid-flight. Some disappeared entirely from sensor lock, only to reappear within kilometers of their targets. Earth's weapons didn't rely on brute energy output. They relied on calculated chaos. Council defense algorithms began to fail. Their targeting systems, built for structured conflict, couldn't prioritize. Threats came from all directions. Some drones exploded in proximity. Others embedded, then detonated with delay. Even after destruction, they released microfragments that lodged into ship joints and heat regulators. What stunned commanders wasn't just the assault, it was the minimal human presence. No flagship. No obvious control structure. The battle appeared autonomous. The enemy was the system itself. Coordinated, relentless, evolving. Desperation crept in. The Council had never faced war conducted without ego. No declarations. No monologues. Just pure response. Their assumptions about human warfare, emotion-driven, disorganized, were wrong. This was war as function. An attempt was made to regroup near Europa's orbit. 9 ships realigned, forming a defensive lattice. They launched countermeasures, EMP blasts, anti-drone nets, gravitational pulses meant to scramble trajectories. For a moment, the tide slowed. Then Earth escalated. A signal buried deep within solar radiation pulsed outward. The response was near instant. Orbital kinetic platforms activated. Devices the size of compact buses, loaded with reinforced rods, ignited their engines. They did not carry explosives. They didn't need to. Traveling at hypersonic velocities, they struck without warning. One Council destroyer snapped in half before its shields could react. Another's hull bent inward like paper, folding under the pressure of pure impact. Council leadership aboard the flagship issued emergency withdrawal. Engines powered up, warp drives initialized. Before escape could begin, Earth's last card was played. A wave of jamming signals, fractal in nature, crashed into their systems. Warp locks failed. Navigation AI entered recursive loops. Vessels designed for clean, calculated retreat began spinning into manual overrides. The Council had underestimated the one factor their simulations never modeled properly. Humans fought to win, not to impress. Their strategies weren't designed for display. They were built to break systems. By the end of the engagement, 10 Council ships were disabled, 4 completely destroyed, and several had disappeared off active scans. The rest limped away, wounded, communication disrupted, chain of command fractured. No follow-up message came from Earth. No speech. No victory broadcast. Just silence. And in that silence, the galaxy began to understand. This was not a misunderstanding or an outburst. It was deliberate, precise resistance. Earth hadn't retaliated emotionally. It had executed a playbook prepared in quiet, refined in secret, and deployed without mercy. This wasn't an uprising. It was a warning. Across the galaxy, systems once indifferent to Earth's existence now studied its every move. Word of the Council's defeat spread faster than official channels could contain. Pirated battle footage, fragmented but chilling, circulated through backdoor feeds. Ships engulfed in flames. Council flagships spiraling disabled. Drones that moved with lethal purpose. No one believed it at first. Then came silence from the task force. No refutations. No counterclaims. Just a vacuum. And that was louder than confirmation. The political balance began to shift. Member civilizations questioned what had gone wrong. Some demanded immediate retaliation, others urged caution. Earth had broken precedent. No species had ever resisted an enforcement fleet and forced it to retreat intact. Not with outdated technology. Not without help. Not with so few visible assets. Within council chambers, composure gave way to calculation. Theories flooded internal networks. Intelligence divisions searched for hidden influences. Perhaps Earth had been armed by a rogue power. Perhaps it had allies outside known civilizations. But the data pointed elsewhere. This wasn't borrowed strength. The weapons bore no foreign signature. The tactics, unorthodox. The mindset, alien even to the aliens. This was Earth's doing alone. Behind closed doors, experts dissected fragments of Earth's transmissions. What emerged was worse than expected. Not only had Earth prepared, its approach had no central doctrine. Their response had been modular, decentralized, reactive. Command decisions made without delay, outcomes determined without centralized debate. It wasn't that Earth had superior weapons, it had better timing. Faster adjustments. No reliance on tradition or hierarchy. New intelligence warned of Earth's psychological layer. The broadcasts weren't mistakes. They were crafted. Earth knew how to seed fear, even in the most advanced species. The message embedded in their silence was intentional. We are not afraid of consequences. We've lived with them since we first stood upright. And we're ready for more. Council strategists attempted to recalibrate. Plans were drafted for a second campaign. This time, heavier force, wider scope, faster execution. But as they simulated outcomes, a pattern emerged. Every success required assumptions: that Earth wouldn't escalate further, that their strategic reserves were depleted, that the first strike was their limit. And those assumptions couldn't be confirmed. Analysts noted something more alarming. No communication had come from Earth after the battle. No gloating. No demands. No offers. The complete absence of negotiation unsettled even the most militant voices. Most species fought for recognition, territory, or power. Earth had fought for none of those. It fought to stop an expectation. That made its future actions harder to predict. Civilizations once loyal to the Council began murmuring dissent. If Earth could resist with limited resources, what might others do if inspired? Whispers of rebellion grew in systems once pacified by fear. Some envoys began requesting dialogues with Earth behind the Council's back. Not alliances. Not aid. Just understanding. Council leadership now faced two choices: escalate and risk total war against an enemy that had already proven it didn't fear extinction, or recalibrate its stance and recognize Earth as something different. Neither option came without cost. In one emergency session, the Council's central AI presented a chilling projection. If Earth's resistance methods became common knowledge, up to 17 minor civilizations could rebel within 2 cycles. Suppression would require redistributing 70% of current fleets. And should Earth retaliate during that redistribution, response capacity would drop by 40%. Meanwhile, Earth broadcast one message, simple, untranslated in Council code, meant for all to see. It displayed raw footage, missiles launching, cruisers braking, satellites coordinating. No narration. No demands. Just a closing phrase burned into the end of the transmission. We are not prey. That sentence became a fracture line. For some Council members, it was arrogance. For others, it was proof of sentience equal to their own. A vote was called, one of the most divisive in the Council's history. Acknowledging Earth as an independent military entity would be a precedent that reshaped policy. Denying it risked open war. The result was near even. One vote tipped the outcome. Earth was granted recognition, but not membership. A middle status was created, something unprecedented: planetary sovereignty without assimilation. No tribute. No oversight. No weapons restrictions. But under the condition that Earth would not export its doctrine of resistance. Earth never replied. The silence itself became a new language, understood galaxy-wide. Earth had entered the galactic stage not as a petitioner, but as a signal. A reminder. Dominance was not permanent. Peace was not weakness. And silence was not surrender. The Council's final contingency rested on overwhelming force. While political factions debated, military branches worked in secret, assembling the largest fleet in 3 centuries. Not just for Earth, this was a message to the galaxy. Order, once fractured, would be restored by example. Over 500 ships, including siege carriers and mobile starbases, positioned themselves in deep orbit beyond Pluto. The plan was total. No warning. No dialogue. Annihilation would reaffirm control. Earth knew it was coming. The data leaks weren't intercepted, they were allowed. Human cryptographers fed false intel, partial scans, misleading energy signatures. A game of proximity chess unfolded in silence. Probes disguised as asteroids drifted near Council formations. Deep-sea antennas recorded even faint subspace tremors. Human analysts mapped the entire fleet weeks before launch. But Earth didn't prepare for a direct confrontation. It prepared to end the conversation. Operation Gravestone was activated. Built in obscurity, hidden beneath decades of misdirection, it wasn't a fleet. It wasn't a weapon by definition. It was a principle turned into protocol, mutually assured silence. A system of autonomous failsafes rigged to destabilize critical celestial objects, not by impact, but by targeted resonance. Stars could be pushed into premature eruptions. Gas giants collapsed inward. It didn't require Earth's survival, just its willingness to pay the cost. The Council received proof. One of their listening posts orbiting a dead star in Sector 89 simply ceased existing. No radiation burst. No debris field. Just absence. Replayed data showed the final image, a spike in harmonic frequency, followed by instant void. Earth's signal arrived 20 minutes later. One word. Test. Council war planners hesitated. They studied the signal. It bore no encryption. No hidden code. Just a timestamp and a location. The silence after wasn't threatening, it was worse. It was indifferent. Earth had nothing more to prove. Strategists convened in emergency simulation chambers. No outcome ended in certainty. Every aggressive model resulted in loss. Not always defeat, but consequence, massive, global, system-wide consequence. Earth had flipped the scale. Victory no longer meant dominance. It meant survival, barely. A motion was filed quietly through Council diplomatic channels. An offer unspoken but understood. Earth would not be touched. In return, it would not act. No treaties. No apologies. Just stillness. The Council would maintain its position, but not press further. No reinforcements. No encirclements. The offer was met with no ceremony. Earth issued no acceptance, no thanks. It simply returned to watching. Other species took notice. Quietly, carefully, signals were sent toward Earth. Not alliances, questions. How? Why? Earth responded only with files. Not propaganda, not manifestos. Just history. Its own. Humanity's archive of war, survival, struggle, reinvention. A brutal, honest ledger of everything it had learned the hard way. Across lesser-known systems, the effect was immediate. Uprisings stalled. Rebellions paused. Not out of fear, but curiosity. If Earth could reject the galaxy's order without collapsing, perhaps the order itself was flawed. Council authority adjusted. It stopped issuing ultimatums. Began drafting agreements that included options. Minor civilizations were no longer offered one path, they were shown several. Earth had not destroyed the Council's power. It had redefined its limits. Back home, nothing changed visibly. Cities thrived. Satellites rotated. Communications resumed. But inside classified bunkers and encrypted archives, the machinery remained active. Not expanded. Maintained. Not out of paranoia. But duty. Humanity hadn't declared dominance. It hadn't claimed territory. It hadn't asked for recognition. What it had done was enforce a new understanding. Peace was only peace when both sides could walk away. Earth had made that possible. Not by demanding it. By ensuring it. The most advanced civilizations couldn't comprehend it at first. They had grown through hierarchy, through gradual power expansion, through doctrine. Earth had arrived from the opposite direction, scarred, inconsistent, fragmented, and yet unified where it mattered most. In will. In Council archives, Earth's designation was updated. Not a threat. Not an ally. A new classification emerged, equilibrium catalyst. A term used once, in theory. Now assigned to a real world. Earth didn't respond to that label either. It didn't need to. Because far above its atmosphere, a web of silent platforms tracked distant stars. Autonomous systems rotated in silence. Protocols updated by clockwork. And on the edge of human space, motionless satellites waited, transmitting nothing, receiving everything. No threats. No warnings. No movement. But the entire galaxy understood one fact without translation. Earth would never be first to speak again. But if ever spoken to with force, it would answer.